Hello, Alyssa Cedillo with Tree of Life Counseling Center and Root of It Foundation today. And today we're going to be naming something pretty essential. We're talking about the politics of diagnosing in play therapy and how the DSM harms children and family with their bias. But how, as play therapists, we can use the therapeutic powers of play to decolonize. If we truly honor the therapeutic powers of play, communication, emotional wellness, social connection, and personal strengths, then decolonizing play therapy becomes fluid, natural, and unavoidable. Because these powers are meant to be filtered through DSM bias, we have to be more critically minded. The DSM is not built with our communities in mind. It was built through a Western lens that routinely misreads culturally based behaviors as a disorder, difference as a deficit, and survival strategies as maladaptive, missing entirely the brilliance of children and families and how they adapt to conditions that they've been required to navigate. These are survival strategies, not maladaptive behaviors. And in play therapy, this can show up very, very quickly. A child who avoids eye contact becomes someone that shows a lack of respect or is labeled as socially impaired, insecure, or even afraid. Instead of being understood through the therapeutic power of enhancing social relationships, honoring connection in the way their culture defines it. A child who speaks in stories, metaphors, rhythm, and circular narrative often gets flagged as disorganized thinking, even though these are core ways that children facilitate communication and play: symbolic expression, narrative processing, emotional safety, and meaning making rooted in culture. We may even see their parents or caregivers engage in the same way. A child who uses movement, humor, or big imaginative play to regulate themselves often gets described as avoidant or dysregulated when they're actively fostering emotional wellness, using play to soothe, master, and process. A child who relies on communal play, shared storytelling, or relational rituals gets pathologized oftentimes as overly dependent when they are practicing the therapeutic powers of play of enhancing social relationships, grounded in collectivism and interdependence. A child who code switches, who translates for family or carries adult responsibilities is often labeled as parentified, instead of recognizing the additional portions that they are navigating structural realities. And they're using play to increase personal strengths like resilience, problem solving, and role experimenting roles. Here's a practical decolonial shift. Before we begin to diagnose and label, we need to pause and think and be reflective. We can ask ourselves, how do the therapeutic powers of play show up in this child and family's culturally rooted behaviors? And what cultural knowledge would change my interpretation of these behaviors? Then we do the most important part. We ask the family, we ask the caregivers, we ask the child, we ask the community, and we allow their wisdom to interrupt the DSM's bias and assumptions. This is where we are change makers. Decolonizing play therapy means slowing down and reflecting. Is this behavior a symptom or is it cultural wounding? Is this behavior something to pathologize or is it part of a larger cultural context that I as a provider am missing? Is this communication style a problem? If so, for who? Or is it simply unfamiliar to us? Is the child struggling? Or am I witnessing a culturally rooted way of expressing emotion, connection, and protection? When we shift from pathologizing to witnessing, we stop mislabeling, misinterpreting, and putting our own biases on something that is actually wisdom, adaptation, and ancestral communication. We start honoring the child, the caregivers, and the family unit as a whole, the whole child's world. We start honoring them instead of forcing them into a set, rigid way that we think is right. This is the work. Naming the politics of diagnosis, educating our children and families about this, refusing to let the DSM define our children, our communities, and our families, and using the therapeutic powers of play as they were meant to be used, not as something we just go over when we're bored, not as something we just teach supervisees, but how they were intended to be used, a guide for us. We're going to use it this time to guide us back to a place of cultural humility, cultural clarity, and growth fostering relationships. We look forward to continuing working with you. Let us know how you use the therapeutic powers of play in your room to help with cultural context.